Start with Saturday's Telegraph and more evidence that Labour and the Tories might have more in common than they like to admit. Paul.
As they often do, particularly around election time. Blair government wanted to house asylum seekers in camp on Isle of Mull. So former Labour PM, as if we didn't know, also considered the Falklands Islands and wrote to illegal immigrants saying, just return them, the archives show. So this is basically harking back to 2002, where, by the way, the monthly average was 8,800 immigrants. Now that's like...
Yeah, so nothing like it is now.
Now weekly.
But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we have an article about 3 months ago where there was a big uproar because it was revealed that it had been considered that they might house asylum seekers in, I think, one of the Hebrides, one of the Scottish
Lee
islands.
Anderson said exactly the same thing.
Right.
Almost in the same way. What, at this point...
So does that mean that every successive government has thought of this as an offshore
Labour
solution?
could argue, if you're a whip or for the Labour Party, or you're in the Labour Party and you're trying to defend this, you'll say, yeah, but Tony Blair looked at this and dismissed it because it didn't come to fruition. However, it's dressed as a gotcha moment. It is a gotcha moment in the sense that we've got Tony Blair advising Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's coming out saying the Rwanda plan's rubbish.
Yes.
We would never think of something like this, or certainly would never do it in this way, only to find out that 20 years ago his Lord and Master...
That's not what Keir Starmer said, I'm sorry. Keir Starmer's not said that. Keir Starmer said, we will do something like this, but we'll do it a different way, which will be legal and will actually go through.
Once he sat back and saw...
So wait, Josh, are you saying that Keir Starmer does support some kind of offshore...
That's what the Labour have been talking about, and they've been... So there's two things that I think are important here that are interesting about this.
Yes.
Number one is, this is encouraging in that Labour has been aware of this issue for a long time, for 20 years or so, pointing the fact that this isn't immigration, illegal immigration, is not a left-right issue. It's an issue that needs to be sorted in terms of just our sovereignty, but also finances and whatnot. So what's happened is, of course, the left have moved further left,
yes,
and would say that even Tony Blair isn't actually left-wing.
But Tony Blair never said he was left-wing.
Well, you know, but I think he would say he's left.
No, I think
he would say he's centrist.
I think he would say he's on the right of the Labour Party, but I don't think he would.
No, but I'd say overall he would say he's left-wing.
No, I don't think so. I think
he really thinks he's right-wing?
No, I think he's quite adamant that he's not left-wing. Like, he's never claimed to be.
Well, I mean, it depends. I guess we're arguing here what you think of left-wing. I'm talking far left. I would say he thinks himself...
I think he thinks himself as a centrist,
well, okay,
probably.
But anyway,
and all winners are.
And the other thing is, it shows how, even though this was stuff that's been written down and talked about 20 years ago, it's still not sorted.
But this is
a perennial issue, like housing.
But it's part of the problem that whenever Labour talks about immigration, it gets a big backlash from within its own support base. This happened to Ed Miliband, you know, and it's as though Labour can't really address the immigration issue because when they do, they get too much flack for it.
Of course. I do... Unusually for me, I really do disagree with Josh on this. I think Labour have been very performative about this issue, and they realise it's going to become sort of the main pole in the tent to win the general election. Do
you mean that they haven't been specific enough in terms of what... I've seen a lot of talk about, we will solve the migrant crisis, the small boats crisis, but I haven't heard any detail from some.
Prior to the Tories talking about Rwanda and third party, this is the first time we've heard anything from Labour. Now, I agree with Josh that since it's failed for Tories, Labour has said, well, we could do a similar thing, but we'd do it differently.
Yeah.
However, I think they've been very performative on this, and they're making it out that they've got the solution, and no one's got the solution. And this hasn't been through its feasibility yet. I think this is a valid solution. The third country.
I mean,
I think so.
I mean,
because it needs to be
but the Rwanda plan has been a shambles.
But the reason why Rwanda didn't work is because it wasn't judged a safe country. If they could find a safe country, and they're talking about Albania, and they're talking also slightly differently about processing like having the UK system set up within that country to process, as opposed to just dumping everyone in Rwanda. But it's interesting here that 20 years ago, he literally wrote down, Blair, we must not allow the ECHR to stop us dealing with it. So this issue has been going on a long, long time. Exactly the same dynamics have been going on.
Yes.
And it's interesting that, like I said, it hasn't been dealt with, whoever...
That is interesting.